The American dream. It was never just a phrase. It was a promise, a covenant written into the very soul of the nation. It whispered a simple, powerful truth that no matter who you were or where you came from, if you worked hard and played by the rules, you could build a better life for yourself and your children. It was the promise of a steady job that could support a family, the promise of a quality education that could unlock any door, the promise of a home to call your own, a tangible piece of the world that was yours, and perhaps most importantly, it was the promise of upward mobility, the unshakable belief that each generation would stand on the shoulders of the one before it, reaching ever higher. For decades, this promise was the engine of American progress, the envy of the world. But what happens when that promise feels broken? What happens when the rules of the game seem to change and the ladder of upward mobility seems to have been pulled up? For a growing majority of Americans, particularly millennials and Gen Z, the American dream no longer feels like a promise to be fulfilled, but a myth from a bygone era. They are working harder, are more educated, and are more productive than any generation before them, yet they are falling further and further behind. The foundational pillars that once supported the dream: affordable housing, accessible education, stable careers, and reliable healthcare are cracking under the weight of a system that feels fundamentally altered. Today, we're not just asking if the American dream is in trouble. We are investigating why, for millions, the American dream is no longer possible. This is a story about the numbers, the policies, and the systemic shifts that have dismantled the most powerful promise in modern history. Let's start with the most tangible piece of the dream: the home. For the post-war generation, home ownership was the bedrock of middle-class life. Fueled by programs like the GI Bill and FHA loans, a single, steady income from a factory or an office job was often enough to secure a mortgage on a new starter home. It was the primary vehicle for building intergenerational wealth. Now, fast forward to today. That same starter home, if it hasn't been torn down and replaced with a McMansion, is no longer a starter home. It's an investment property. A chart of median home prices versus median household income tells the story in brutal detail. For decades, the lines moved in relative harmony. A home cost roughly 2 to 3 times the average annual salary. Around the turn of the millennium, those lines began to diverge, and in the last decade, they have shot apart. Today, the national median home price is more than 7 times the median individual income. The down payment, the first barrier to entry, has become an insurmountable wall for many. But even for those who managed to save for years, they now find themselves in a rigged game. They are not just competing with other families, they are competing with the deepest pockets on earth. Private equity firms, led by giants like Blackstone, have poured hundreds of billions of dollars into the single-family housing market, buying up homes by the thousand with all-cash offers, often sight unseen. They're not buying places to live, they're buying revenue streams. Housing for them is not a social good, but an asset class to be optimized for shareholder return. This activity puts a permanent floor under prices and removes critical inventory from the market, transforming potential homes for first-time buyers into permanent rental properties. The first rung on the ladder to building wealth hasn't just been raised. For many, it has been sawed off completely. The debt sentence of education. The second great pillar of the American dream was education. The college degree was the golden ticket, the great equalizer. It was the path from the working class to the professional class. State universities were built to be affordable, and a summer job could often cover a significant portion of a year's tuition. Today, that ticket comes with a crippling cost. Since 1980, the average cost of college tuition has risen by a staggering 1,200%, wildly outpacing inflation and wage growth. This has fueled a national crisis of unprecedented scale, the student debt crisis. Over 45 million Americans are now saddled with student loan debt. For an entire generation, this isn't just a bill to be paid, it's a life sentence. The average student debt burden for a bachelor's degree is over $30,000, and for graduate degrees, it can easily climb into the 6 figures. This debt follows them everywhere. Thanks to a 2005 law, it is nearly impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. The consequences are devastating and far-reaching. Instead of starting their adult lives with a sense of optimism and opportunity, graduates are beginning in a deep financial hole. They delay buying homes. They delay getting married. They delay having children. They put off saving for retirement. The very tool that was meant to ensure their upward mobility has become the anchor that weighs them down, a financial ball and chain that stifles risk-taking, entrepreneurship, and the ability to build a secure future. The promise of education has, for many, become the reality of indentured servitude. The great decoupling. So why is everything so expensive? Why does it feel like we're working harder than ever but can't get ahead? The answer can be seen in one of the most important economic charts of the last century, the Great Decoupling. For the 3 decades after World War II, the American promise held true. As the economy grew and workers became more productive, their wages grew right along with it. The prosperity was shared. But in the mid-1970s, something fundamental broke. Worker productivity continued its steep upward climb. We became better, faster, and more efficient at producing goods and services. But the wages of the average worker flatlined. All of the economic gains from that increased productivity stopped flowing to the people doing the work. Instead, it was redirected to corporate profits, to CEO salaries, and to shareholder dividends. This isn't a political opinion. It's an economic fact. This decoupling is the original sin of the modern economy. It is the core reason why the cost of housing, education, and healthcare seems to be in a different galaxy from the average person's paycheck. You're not imagining it. The game was, in fact, changed. The end of the career, the rise of the gig. The third pillar of the dream was the stable career. The unspoken social contract was that if you were loyal to a company, the company would be loyal to you. It meant a 40-year career, a defined benefit pension, and the security of knowing that your job was safe. Unions fought for and protected these benefits, ensuring that workers had a voice and a share in the profits. That world is gone. The company man has been replaced by the at-will employee. Pensions have been replaced by 401ks, shifting all of the investment risk from the corporation to the individual. The power of unions has been systematically dismantled, and the concept of a lifelong career with one company has been replaced by a reality of constant job hopping, corporate restructuring, and the ever-present threat of a layoff notice in your inbox. Into this void has stepped the gig economy. Hailed as the future of work, it promised flexibility and the freedom to be your own boss. But for millions, it has become a trap. It's a world without a safety net, no health insurance, no paid sick leave, no retirement benefits, no minimum wage guarantees. It is a system of permanent precarity where workers are treated as disposable commodities, their livelihoods dependent on the whims of an algorithm. The security of a predictable paycheck has been replaced by the anxiety of constantly chasing the next gig, the next delivery, the next ride. The health-wealth trap. Even for those who manage to navigate the treacherous waters of housing, education, and employment, there is one final hurdle that can shatter the American dream in an instant: getting sick. The United States has the dubious distinction of having the most expensive healthcare system in the developed world, by a massive margin. Yet on many key health metrics like life expectancy and infant mortality, we lag behind our peers. Our system is a complex and often cruel patchwork where access to care is largely tied to your employer. This creates a powerful disincentive to change jobs, start a business, or retire early, trapping people in positions they may dislike out of fear of losing their health coverage. But the real terror is the financial ruin that a single major medical event can bring. Medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the United States. A cancer diagnosis, a serious car accident, or a complicated childbirth can lead to hundreds of thousands of dollars in bills, even for those with good insurance. The dream of a secure middle-class life is a fragile illusion when it can all be wiped out by a single unlucky twist of fate. This constant underlying financial anxiety is a burden that previous generations, in a world of simpler and more affordable care, did not have to bear. The rigged game. So how did this happen? Was it all just an accident of history, or was the system redesigned? The uncomfortable truth is that many of these changes were the result of deliberate policy choices made over the last 40 to 50 years. The decline of antitrust enforcement allowed for massive corporate consolidation, giving a few giant companies immense power over both the prices we pay and the wages we earn. The systematic weakening of labor unions stripped workers of their collective bargaining power. The tax code was rewritten to favor wealth over work. Capital gains, the money made from selling stocks and other assets, are taxed at a much lower rate than the wages earned by a teacher or a firefighter. This creates a feedback loop where the wealthy, who derive most of their income from investments, get to keep more of their money, which they then use to accumulate more assets, further widening the gap. And the core philosophy of American business shifted. The post-war idea of stakeholder capitalism, that a company has a responsibility to its employees, its community, and its customers, was replaced by the doctrine of shareholder primacy. This is the belief that a corporation's one and only legal and moral obligation is to maximize profits for its shareholders at any cost. This philosophy justifies laying off thousands of workers to boost a stock price, fighting against wage increases, and cutting corners on quality. It is the intellectual framework that underpins the Great Decoupling. The dream has become harder to achieve because the rules of the game have been rewritten to systematically funnel the nation's wealth upwards. The American dream was never about getting rich. It was about something simpler and more profound: security. The security of a home, the security of a good education, the security of a stable job, and the security of knowing that a medical emergency wouldn't lead to financial ruin. Today, for a vast and growing number of Americans, that security is gone. Each of the foundational pillars of the post-war dream has been systematically chipped away, replaced by a new reality of debt, precarity, and inequality. The dream has been transformed from a collective promise into a game of individual survival, a game that feels increasingly unwinnable. This is not a story of individual failure. It is a story of systemic change. The question now is whether this change is permanent. Can the promise be restored? Or do we need to redefine the dream itself for a new, more challenging century? The answer will define the future of the nation. The American dream is not just an idea. It's a reflection of the society we choose to be. And right now, that reflection is looking back at us, asking if we are willing to fight for the promise we once made to ourselves. Do you believe the American dream is still possible? What has your experience been? We want to hear your story and your thoughts in the comments below. If this topic resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe for more critical analysis, and share it. This is a conversation that is vital to the future of our country. Let's have it.